The rancher wanted a simple wife, but an Apache woman changed his life forever. He was known in the valley as a quiet man who worked harder than anyone else. The rancher lived alone on a wide stretch of land where the sky felt endless and the wind carried the smell of dust and grass. Every morning he woke before the sun, pulled on his worn boots, and stepped outside without looking back. His life followed the same pattern every day, and he liked it that way. Order gave him peace. Silence gave him control. The ranch had belonged to his family for generations. His father had taught him that land did not lie and animals did not pretend. People, however, were different. People brought noise, expectations, and disappointment. After losing his parents at a young age, he learned to rely only on himself. He worked the ranch with strong hands and a closed heart, believing that feelings only made life complicated. Years passed like this. Seasons changed, fences were repaired, cattle were raised and sold. At night, the rancher sat alone at his table, eating simple meals. He did not complain about the loneliness, but it followed him like a shadow. Sometimes, when the wind howled outside and the house felt too quiet, he wondered what it would be like to hear another voice. But those thoughts never stayed long. He always pushed them away. In his mind, love was unnecessary. What he wanted was balance. Someone to keep the house in order, cook meals, and make the ranch feel complete. Not romance, not deep emotion, just partnership, clean and simple. He believed marriage was a duty, not a dream. Many men in the area spoke of love and happiness, but he saw how those same men argued, struggled, and broke apart. He did not want that kind of life. One evening, while sitting on his porch watching the sun sink behind the hills, the idea came to him clearly. He needed a wife. Not because his heart asked for it, but because his life required it. A woman who understood routine, who would not challenge his ways, who would accept the ranch as it was. He told himself that such an arrangement would be fair. He would provide shelter and stability. She would provide order and companionship. Nothing more was needed. The next day, he mentioned his plan to a neighbor while loading supplies in town. The neighbor laughed lightly and asked if he truly believed life worked that way. The rancher did not smile. He said he knew exactly what he wanted. He was not looking for trouble or passion, just a simple wife. Word traveled quickly in a small community. People began whispering about the quiet rancher who wanted to marry without love. Some were curious, some were amused. Others shook their heads. A few women showed interest, but when they met him, they sensed his distance. He spoke politely but without warmth. His expectations were clear, and many walked away after realizing he would never offer more than practicality. Days turned into weeks and nothing changed. The rancher continued his routine, but the idea of marriage stayed in his mind. He believed he was being reasonable, yet something felt unsettled. Not wrong, just unfinished. Still, he refused to question himself. He trusted logic more than emotion. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. While riding near the edge of his land, he noticed movement near an old storage shed. He stopped his horse, watching carefully. He was used to animals wandering onto his property, but this was different. A woman stepped into view, standing still as if unsure whether to run or speak. She looked tired but steady, her posture calm despite the uncertainty in her eyes. She did not look like anyone he had seen before. Her clothes were simple, worn by travel and time. Her dark hair was braided neatly, and her expression was quiet but strong. She did not lower her gaze or ask for help. She simply waited. The rancher felt an unfamiliar pause inside himself. He had expected fear or desperation. Instead, he saw dignity. He asked why she was there. His voice was firm but not unkind. She answered slowly, choosing her words with care. She said she needed a place to rest, a chance to work, and a moment of peace. She did not explain more, and strangely, he did not press her. Something about her presence made him listen instead of command. He offered water and asked if she was alone. She nodded. He could sense she carried a long journey behind her, though she spoke little of it. When he told her about the ranch, she listened quietly. There was no surprise in her eyes, only understanding. He did not know why, but he invited her to stay temporarily. He told himself it was practical. The ranch always needed extra hands, yet deep inside something shifted. This woman did not fit the image he had created of a simple wife. She was calm but not obedient, silent but not weak. That night, as he sat alone at his table, he realized something unsettled him more than loneliness ever had. His world, so carefully built on routine and control, had just opened a door he never planned to unlock. And for the first time in many years, he did not know what would come next. The morning after she arrived, the ranch felt different to him. The air was the same, the animals moved as always, and the sun rose in its usual place, yet something had shifted. He noticed it when he stepped outside and saw her near the well, carefully lifting a bucket of water. She worked quietly, not asking where things were, not waiting for instructions. She watched first, learned, then acted. He cleared his throat, unsure why he felt the need to announce himself. She looked up and nodded, a simple greeting. There was no fear in her eyes, no attempt to impress him. That unsettled him more than anything else. Most people try to speak too much to explain themselves. She did not. He told her she could help with small tasks for now. She listened and agreed. Her voice was calm, steady, and respectful, but she did not sound grateful in a way that made him feel powerful. She sounded equal. He reminded himself that she was only staying temporarily. He did not want complications. He had rules and he planned to keep them. As the days passed, he watched her more than he meant to. She rose early, often before him, and worked until the light faded. She cooked meals using simple ingredients, yet the food tasted richer somehow. When he asked about it, she said it was the way she prepared things, learned long ago. He did not ask where. Some part of him knew not to push. She kept to herself but was not distant. When he spoke, she listened fully. When she spoke, she chose her words carefully. He noticed that she observed the land with respect, touching the soil gently, speaking softly to the animals. It was not something he had seen before. He had always worked the land with force and discipline. She worked with patience. At first, he corrected her when she did things differently. He told her the right way to clean, cook, or organize. She did not argue. She listened, then sometimes continued doing it her own way. Not in defiance, but with quiet confidence. This confused him. He was used to people either obeying or fighting back. She did neither. One evening, as they ate in silence, he realized he was waiting for her to speak. The thought surprised him. He had never cared for conversation before. When she finally did speak, she asked about the land, how long his family had lived there, what the seasons were like when he was young. No one had asked him those things in years. He answered more than he intended. He spoke about his parents, about learning to ride, about storms that had nearly destroyed the ranch. She listened without interrupting. When he finished, she simply nodded, as if she understood the weight of those memories. He felt exposed, and he did not like that feeling. Yet he did not regret speaking. Later that night, he sat alone and wondered why her presence affected him so strongly. She was not trying to change him. She was simply being herself. That, somehow, felt more challenging than open conflict. Over time, people in town began to notice her. When she accompanied him to buy supplies, eyes followed them. Some were curious, some suspicious. He felt a strange urge to stand closer to her, though he could not explain why. She sensed the looks but remained calm, her expression unreadable. One day, someone asked him directly who she was. He hesitated before answering. He said she was helping on the ranch. The answer felt incomplete, but he did not know how else to describe her. She was not a worker in the usual sense. She was not a guest either. She existed somewhere in between, quietly reshaping his world without permission. As weeks passed, he noticed changes in himself. He began coming inside earlier in the evenings. He fixed things in the house he had ignored for years. He even caught himself wondering if she was tired, if she needed rest. These thoughts annoyed him. He reminded himself of his original plan. He wanted a simple life, not emotional confusion. One afternoon, while repairing a fence together, he asked her why she had come to the valley. The question slipped out before he could stop it. She paused, resting her hands on the wood. For a long moment she said nothing. He thought she would refuse to answer. Instead, she said she had lost her home and was searching for a place where she could live without being told who she must become. Her voice did not shake, but he sensed deep history behind those words. He did not ask more. He respected her silence in the same way she respected his. That night, he lay awake thinking about her words. He had always believed freedom came from control and routine. She seemed to believe it came from dignity and choice. The idea unsettled him. Without realizing it, his expectations began to shift. He stopped thinking about finding a simple wife. He began thinking about what kind of man he was becoming. He noticed that the ranch felt less empty, not because someone was filling a role, but because someone was sharing space. One evening, he found her sitting outside, looking at the stars. He joined her without speaking. They sat in silence, but it did not feel heavy. It felt natural. For the first time, he understood that simplicity was not about silence or obedience. It was about peace. Still, he resisted the change growing inside him. He told himself this was temporary. She would leave one day. Life would return to order. Yet deep down, he feared that when that day came, the quiet would feel louder than ever before. And somewhere in that fear, the rancher realized a truth he was not ready to face. The woman he never expected was already changing him, whether he allowed it or not. The changes did not happen all at once. They came slowly, like the way morning light creeps over the land before anyone notices the sun is fully up. The rancher still woke early, still worked hard, still believed in rules and order. But now there was another rhythm moving alongside his own, and he could no longer ignore it. Living under the same roof brought small moments that felt larger than they should have. He noticed how she folded clothes carefully, not quickly, how she cleaned without wasting water, how she paused before entering a room as if respecting the space itself. These things stayed in his mind long after the day's work ended. He had always rushed through tasks, believing speed meant strength. She showed him another way, steady, thoughtful, calm. Sometimes their differences caused quiet tension. He liked things done exactly as he planned. She believed there was more than one right way. When he spoke sharply, she did not argue, but she did not shrink either. She met his words with silence or a soft reply that carried weight. This confused him. He did not know how to respond to someone who did not fear him and did not challenge him openly. One evening, he returned from the fields tired and frustrated. A storm earlier in the day had damaged part of the fencing. He spoke harshly without meaning to, pointing out something she had done differently in the kitchen. The room went quiet. She did not defend herself. She simply looked at him and said she meant no disrespect, but she would not erase who she was to fit into someone else's shape. Her words were not loud. They were not angry, but they struck him deeply. No one had ever spoken to him that way before. He felt his control slipping, and that frightened him. Control had always been his safety. Without it, he did not know who he was. That night he could not sleep. Her words echoed in his mind. He realized he had never thought about who someone else was before asking them to fit into his life. He had assumed people should adjust to him, just as the land and animals had. But she was not land. She was not something to manage. The next days felt heavy. They worked side by side, but something unspoken hung between them. He wanted to return to how things were, but he also knew there was no going back. A line had been crossed, not by anger but by truth. Slowly, something unexpected happened. Instead of pushing harder, he began listening. When she suggested a different way to handle a task, he paused before refusing. Sometimes he even tried her way. To his surprise, it often worked just as well, sometimes better. This unsettled him, but it also humbled him. He began noticing her laughter, soft, rare but real. He noticed how she hummed quietly while working, a sound that made the house feel warmer. He noticed how she carried pain without letting it harden her heart. These observations stirred something inside him that had been buried for years. One afternoon, while fixing tools together, he asked her about the meaning behind the patterns she carved into a piece of wood. She looked surprised, then explained that each mark represented memory, family, and survival. As she spoke, he realized how little he knew about her world. He felt ashamed of his ignorance, but also curious. Curiosity was new for him. At the same time, the outside world pressed in. People in town grew more openly judgmental. Whispers turned into stares. He heard comments that made him uncomfortable, not because they insulted him, but because they dismissed her humanity. For the first time, he felt anger not for himself, but for someone else. When someone spoke carelessly in his presence, he shut it down. The words came out firm and final. He did not explain himself. He did not need to. That night, he realized he had chosen a side without even thinking about it. Their bond deepened through shared hardship. A dry spell tested the land, and both worked tirelessly to keep the ranch alive. Exhausted evenings were spent sitting together in silence, passing a cup of water, sharing quiet strength. He learned that closeness did not require words. Still, fear followed him. He worried about losing control. He worried about change. He worried that caring would lead to pain. But each time he considered pushing her away, the thought of the empty house stopped him. The silence he once loved now felt unbearable. One evening, she spoke of leaving. Not because she was unhappy, but because she believed she should not stay where she was not fully accepted. The words struck him harder than he expected. He felt panic rise, sharp and sudden. He realized that the idea of her absence hurt more than the fear of change. He did not beg her to stay. He did not make promises. He simply told her that the ranch was not the same without her, and neither was he. The truth surprised them both. She listened, her expression thoughtful. She did not answer right away. And in that pause, he understood something important. He could not control her choice. He could only offer respect. That night, as he stood alone under the wide sky, he finally admitted what he had been avoiding. The simple life he wanted was never about rules or silence. It was about peace. And peace, he was learning, came not from control but from understanding. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing was certain. The worlds that once clashed under his roof were no longer fighting. They were slowly, carefully, learning how to stand together. The change that had begun quietly inside the rancher now faced a test from the outside world. Until this point, most of the struggle had lived in his thoughts and emotions, but life had a way of bringing hidden matters into the open. It started with a visit from town officials who came riding out one afternoon. Their arrival was unexpected. The rancher greeted them politely, though his instincts warned him that this visit was not friendly. They spoke of land records, boundaries, and old agreements. Their words were careful, but their eyes kept moving toward the house, toward her. When they asked who she was, the rancher felt a tightness in his chest. He answered simply that she lived and worked on the ranch. One man raised an eyebrow and said that such arrangements could cause problems, especially given her background. The rancher heard the meaning beneath the words. It was not about rules. It was about fear of difference. After they left, the house felt heavy. She knew something was wrong without him saying a word. That evening, she asked directly if her presence was bringing trouble to his land. He wanted to say no immediately, but honesty stopped him. He told her that some people did not understand what they could not control. She nodded slowly. This was not new to her. She had faced such looks and words her whole life. What hurt was not the outside pressure, but the possibility that it might push her away again. She told him she did not want to be the reason his life became harder. Her words struck deep. For the first time, he saw how often she had chosen to leave places quietly rather than fight for them. Not because she was weak, but because she was tired of proving her worth. He felt a heavy shame settle in his chest. He realized how easy his life had been compared to hers, even in loneliness. Over the next days, tension grew in the valley. Whispers spread that the rancher was changing, that he was breaking from tradition. Some stopped greeting him in town. Others spoke kindly to his face but coldly behind his back. He had always believed independence meant standing alone. Now he learned it sometimes meant standing firm. One night, she finally shared more of her past. Not in great detail, but enough for him to understand the weight she carried. She spoke of being moved from place to place, of being told where she belonged and where she did not. She spoke of strength passed down through stories, songs, and silence. She did not speak with bitterness. She spoke with truth. As she talked, he felt something break open inside him. He saw clearly how his desire for a simple wife had come from comfort and privilege, not wisdom. He had wanted ease without understanding the cost of denying someone their identity. That realization hurt, but it also freed him. The next test came quickly. A formal notice arrived, questioning her right to stay on the land. It was written in polite language, but its message was clear. She was not welcome. The rancher read the paper twice, then folded it carefully. He felt anger, fear, and uncertainty, all fighting inside him. That night he did not sleep. He walked the land under the stars, thinking of his parents, of the values he believed they had taught him. He asked himself what kind of man he truly was. One who followed rules when they were easy, or one who stood for what was right, even when it cost him. By morning, his decision was made. When officials returned, he met them calmly. He told them she was part of his household, his work, and his life. He said the land was his responsibility, and so were the people on it. His voice did not shake. For the first time, he was not trying to control the situation. He was choosing it. The discussion was tense. Warnings were given. Consequences were mentioned. He listened, then repeated his position. He would not ask her to leave. If they wished to challenge him, they could do so openly. Silence followed. Eventually, they left, clearly unhappy. When he returned to the house, she was waiting. She had expected him to tell her it was time to go. Instead, he told her what he had done. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her eyes filled with quiet emotion, not relief alone, but recognition. She told him no one had ever chosen her when it was difficult. His chest tightened as he realized how much those words mattered. He understood then that loyalty was not about ownership or protection. It was about respect. Life did not become easier after that. Some doors closed. Some friendships faded. But something stronger took their place. The ranch felt more alive than it ever had. The work felt shared, not divided. The silence felt peaceful, not empty. He knew he had crossed a line that could not be undone. But he also knew he had finally stepped into the man he was meant to be. Not one who demanded simplicity from others, but one who learned it through courage and understanding. And as the days moved forward, he realized that whatever the future held, it would no longer be shaped by fear. It would be shaped by choice, and that made all the difference. Time did not suddenly slow down after his decision. Life continued with the same early mornings and long days, but everything felt different. The rancher no longer worked only out of habit. He worked with purpose. Every fence he repaired, every animal he cared for carried a deeper meaning. He was no longer maintaining land just to survive. He was building a life he believed in. The woman noticed the change before he spoke of it. He listened more. He asked questions. He allowed space for her thoughts instead of filling every moment with his own plans. When problems appeared, they faced them together, not as owner and helper, but as two people sharing responsibility. The valley remained divided. Some still avoided them. Others slowly softened when they saw that the ranch did not fall apart, that order did not disappear. In fact, the land began to thrive. Crops grew healthier. Animals stayed calmer. Even the house felt warmer, filled with quiet life rather than silence. One evening, after a long day, they sat outside watching the sky turn gold. The wind moved gently across the fields. The rancher spoke honestly for the first time about his past fears. He admitted how much he had relied on control to protect himself from loss. He admitted that he had been afraid of caring because caring meant risk. She listened, as she always did, without judgment. Then she shared her own truth. She spoke of learning to carry pain without letting it harden her heart. She spoke of choosing dignity even when the world made it difficult. She told him that strength was not about standing alone, but about standing true. Their words did not change everything at once, but they sealed something unspoken between them. A bond built not on need but on respect. As months passed, the seasons turned. With each change, the rancher noticed how deeply she had become part of his life, not as a role, not as an idea, but as herself. He no longer thought of her as someone passing through. He thought of her as home. One day, he asked her to walk the land with him. They stopped at a hill overlooking the ranch. He told her that when he first thought of marriage, he believed it was about filling an empty space. Now he understood it was about sharing space without erasing one another. He told her that he did not want a simple wife. He wanted a life built on choice and respect. He did not ask her to promise anything. He did not try to define the future. He simply offered himself honestly. She took a long breath, then nodded. She told him she had stayed because she felt seen, not owned, because she felt safe without being silenced. Their commitment did not come with ceremony or noise. It came quietly, through shared mornings, steady work and trust earned over time. They chose each other every day, and that choice became stronger than any rule or tradition. The ranch became known not just for its land, but for its spirit. Travelers spoke of a place where dignity was honored. Slowly, even the valley changed. Not because people were forced to accept something new, but because they witnessed what respect could build. The rancher often reflected on who he once was, a man who wanted control, a man who feared change. He did not judge that version of himself anymore. He understood it. Growth did not come from shame, but from learning. The woman never lost who she was. She did not soften her strength to fit his world. Instead, they shaped a world where both could stand fully. Their lives became proof that love was not about possession, but partnership. Years later, when the rancher looked across the land at sunset, he no longer saw something to manage. He saw something to honor. He had learned that simplicity was not about avoiding complexity, but about choosing what truly mattered. The woman who changed his life did not do so by force or demand. She did it by being whole in a world that tried to make her small. And in learning to see her, the rancher finally learned to see himself. What began as a search for order became a journey toward understanding, and that understanding became the foundation of a life neither of them had imagined, but both had been waiting for all along.